We're not doing Wakefield.
No, we'll do them later. Do you want to do Wakefield now? Get them out of the way. I love the build-up to the game. This is the biggest game that's ever been. So big, I couldn't get into the ground. Although at least I didn't get turned away at the gate. But Wakefield lost 12 points to 28 against the spirited Castleford Tigers, who should have put Danny Ward in charge obviously months ago. And signed Blake Austin as well, because he's the greatest signing in the history of Super League. But what a game! What a week for Joe Westerman. Friday night, player of the match in the game, and gets interviewed by Jenna on the telly. Monday's in the Super League Team of the Week. How they come up with the Team of the Week, we don't know. If anyone knows, if anyone from Super League's watching, let us know, please. So you just do it to get social media hits from clubs, and you get as many in as possible. So I reckon that's how they do these teams. And Saturday, he's in the Daily Mail and the Daily Star, Joe Westerman. He's the biggest celebrity in rugby league.
That's what IMG want.
Yeah.
He'll be on I'm a Celebrity before we know it.
I mean, I know. I used a bad word earlier. Well, it's not that bad a word, but I don't think I'd read out the headline in the Daily Star. And the one in the Daily Mail is really, look how long that headline is. Did they not go to journalism school? I mean, I didn't really do, but Joe Westerman, he's in the papers. So well done, Joe. They're getting some much needed publicity for rugby league. Well done to you. As he says, completely trying to ignore the fact that Wakefield were not very good for you. Were there? They let you in. Well, they're me in. They let you in, Phil. And I was on the telly. Wakefield weren't very good. Well, apart from Max Joe, he's good, but
there were two things that struck me. One is that Castleford immediately had more cohesion about them. So whatever Danny Ward has done, yes, they've got a couple of new faces, and certainly Tassipali played well, the Lebanese back rower. Liam Horn as well got, I think, good reviews because his stats were excellent. But it was more that they looked like they knew what they were doing. And their goal line defence was a lot better than it has been this year. By comparison, Wakefield's kicking game was really poor. They didn't put any pressure on concertedly, which I found it really strange that Will Dagger wasn't on the bench, because I think he's been playing his best rugby over the last few weeks, and he's got the ability to fill in a number of positions and change a game. I think you're right, Jowett starts because he's an excellent player.
I played Dagger alongside Gale rather than... But I'm not the coach either. So. I
just think, the Gale-Leno axis didn't work, but they couldn't really change it, whereas I think having Will Dagger on the bench could have changed that. But the worry, I think, for Wakefield is that they seem to get to a point where they face a big game, and it's the big game that lets them down. So it's not that the 3 or 4 home games before they've got wins that weren't expected. They're now suddenly put in a big game. This current Wakefield team, not ones that have won in 2006.
But this is a mentality that goes back to those days, because Wakefield they'll beat a Leeds or they'll beat a Warrington who they're not expected to win, but then they'll come up against Huddersfield the other week, Castleford this week. And I say the concern is not within the squad. There's a bit of cockiness about them now, and the fans are going, we're going to win this. I thought we were going to win.
They maybe have a group of players that when it comes to those games that they need to win, there's something missing. Now, I don't know what that is, other than the fact that it might be something to do with the players that they've got, because clearly they fish in a certain pool. But the worry would now be, where are they going to find a significant win at the end of the season if they haven't got that mentality, which is nothing to do with the coach. He can only work with what he's got. Whereas, if Castleford have got that degree of confidence now, although they've got a harder run in, they could jag another win.
Runs on the ball, isn't it? That's it.
And then suddenly there's even more pressure on Wakefield. They'll go into a game where somebody will say they've got to win this, and my worry would be, I don't know if they've got the cojones to win the games that really matter. From what I saw on Friday,
I mean, I don't know whether I think we talked about last week about are they the favourites, and I think you were sort of suggesting that probably they were, but I suggested they probably were the favourites because they were at home. And does that bring a level of expectation and pressure? And maybe they didn't respond too well to that. I think you made an interesting point though about team selection. But now, having lost that, they're now not. They now
all
don't
the
have that.
Is gone.
Yeah, all that.
Yeah,
they don't have that pressure. That pressure and expectation shifts to Castleford to some degree. But clearly, they've got 2 points at their advantage. I was trying to find their run-ins, the respective run-ins. Then when I was speaking,
well,
and they both look very difficult. To be honest,
Castle, I think, have got the more difficult fixtures. Wakefield have got more home games.
Yeah,
which is where they've clearly won all of their points so far. Castleford will be pleased that they play Leeds the last week of the season, because that's almost a given 2 points.
Yeah, but Leeds might be playing for the playoffs though.
Just like the game last year,
and end up at Old Trafford again. Yeah,
we
could all see it
this year, I don't think.
When I was looking at the respective fixtures, I couldn't really see many winnable games though. Here we are. Yeah, so Wakefield have got Salford away next week, and then they're at home against St Helens, Catalan. Well, they're not easy games. I appreciate they're home games, but I mean, you're talking about possibly 1 and 2 in the league.
Yeah.
Who are will be chasing hard for league leaders, and then they've got Lee away. Well, that's not an easy fixture, and they finish with Wakefield at home. Wakefield at home against Hull KR. So when you look at those, you're probably looking at Salford away. Their away form is terrible. Absolutely. And then they play Hull KR at the end of the season. And given the race for that top 6 could probably go down to the wire, Hull KR could be looking for a win to finish in that 6. So it's a very difficult run. And then when you look at Castleford, they're at home against St Helens this week,
which again will be an interesting test of how far that game has bred into them the ability to stick together. Because it's a very different test this week. They're playing against a team that will come at them for the full 80 minutes, which Wakefield didn't do. They didn't exert enough pressure. In fact, Greg Eden's 2 tries just before half time summed up the difference between the 2 teams, I think.
They then play Warrington away,
which
if you look
Warrington are improving and should have won this week.
But another game in between, they may have improved again. Who knows? And then they play Hull at home, Wigan away, and they play Leeds away. So that's a banker. The last game of the season is a banker, isn't it?
2 points, isn't it? That's guaranteed.
You'd have to say, based on the running, that Castleford is potentially slightly easier, but
I don't know. I
it's
think
week by week, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the problem for Wakefield is purely a psychological one, that they may come to a point where it might be the last round of games where Wakefield need to win and Cass need to lose, and Wakefield will survive. And I know that obviously the last game of the season when London got relegated, Wakefield did enough to beat them. But that was London over-exceeding all year to the point where they'd almost had nothing else left to give. But I would just worry that if Wakefield had to get a result in the last 2 rounds, say, that's where it might prove to be too much on what we saw on Friday. I thought they were really disappointing on Friday. Had they lost by a point, put up a great show, or had they had a controversial try ruled out, or
it's just amazing how many
times.
But
the defence wasn't.
Well, they did have a try ruled out, didn't they, for offside?
Yeah.
Which is one of those that irks me because
it doesn't irk journalists though, because they could fill a million stories with TV pundit slams rules.
Thinks we've got to change the rule.
It's just we've had the application or the interpretation of that law. It's an interpretation. It's not the law. We've had that interpretation for as long as I can really remember, and so the onus has to go back on the players. They know what they're doing, and so just don't stray within the 10. Or if you realise you're within 10, back off and start moving away, and that's the way you can get around it. But
they certainly know if they're in front of the kicker.
Yeah, and Gale did it as well. He got penalised for offside. I think later in the game, when I think Castleford knocked on, they would have had a great opportunity to attack again. So that's discipline for me. It's not. Yeah, okay, we could change the law and we could make it about interpretation, which is what they do in the NRL. One of the arguments about the Super League is that you only have 2 games on TV. So that decision went up as a try, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So on a non-TV game, that would have been given incorrectly, by the way. But that's what makes it even more difficult, because someone's having to judge at the moment whether somebody's within 10 in live play. To then judge, are they within 10 and are they affecting play, is a decision that's open to interpretation. And the more decisions that you have open to interpretation, the more potential inconsistencies you will get. If it is black and white, you can say whether you like it or you don't, but it makes it an easy decision in a way for a match official.
Yeah. Interesting that the R-League game that was charged for yesterday afternoon had a video referee, and I believe the Hull and Salford games that have been on R-League have also had a video referee. That is the road we're going down.
Yeah.
So every game
was the video referee used? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
When do they choose what games are going to be on our league? Because I know they announced them late, but
I
how
think,
fine of us they know in terms of...
Well, I think this is a trial this year, so where it's not necessarily a cash generator, although clearly you would hope that maybe it did, covers the costs at least of the broadcast. But I think we're trialling a system whereby the production quality is good enough because there's enough camera angles there, and the video referee can then feed into that and say, show me 3 or 4 different angles of a try.
When we had...
And every game will have that next year. The
famous helicopter, the Blake Story helicopter. Wigan were playing somebody else, weren't they? And
Wigan were at home,
but they wouldn't have had the video referee at their game, but Huddersfield Leeds did, didn't it? And when there was the 4-way relegation thing you referred to earlier, there was only video referee. Was Wakefield London on the telly?
London was on the telly. Yeah.
I mean, I was there. I can't remember if it was on telly or not. So when it comes down to the final round of the season, and it's still down to Wakefield versus Hull KR at Bellevue, or whatever it's called these days, Big World Sports Stadium, and Castleford at Leeds, but only one's on TV. Shouldn't the other one be with video referee? Because now we've proven we can do this.
Maybe both will be on TV, but
they may not even be played at the same time, and that's a whole other debate.
That is a debate that needs to.
Well, that's not that. if they're not playing at the same time, we might as well just give up, haven't we?
Well, we've had it before, though, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I remember Wigan winning the league on a couple of occasions in the 90s, where they were the last team to play on a weekend. They were playing 7 fixtures in a week, but they sort of knew what they had to do by the time they went on the field.
Now the concept's proven it works at a non-televised
It's purely whether the broadcasting company who's doing it have the ability to cover more than one game at the moment simultaneously.
We will know this will go down, if it went down to 2, it will go down to 2 clubs. If you were the chief executive of Wakefield or Castleford and your game wasn't on TV and the other one was, and you had a contentious decision at your game which hadn't got a video referee out, you weren't very happy, would you?
Well, I don't know why people argue this, but Wakefield would have had a try there, though, wouldn't they?
So we don't want.
So without the video referee,
hang on, we go back to Rod Studd's no video referee.
Without the video referee, they've had a try there.
We make the video referees redundant, save some money at the RFL. So this is good.
You can't always say whether something would be given or wouldn't be. It's just the way it is.
I just think it's interesting that this trialling of our league, as evidenced yesterday afternoon, does have the ability to go to a video referee and was used.
It has to come back to, as it always does, money though, doesn't it? I mean, how many people are going to pay $6.95 or whatever is in advance, or
I think if they've got
on the day?
Every game over a weekend, you are talking about a digital season ticket.
Yeah. If you do that, it's different. Yeah. I have to say, one of the most controversial things in that game, which most people picked up on, was that Chris Kendall was wearing white boots.
Was he?
Disgraceful.
White boots have been.
What do you think he is?
White boots have been banned.
Are they banned
since about 2015, 2016?
This is like on
was
the
it
darts.
a fashion statement?
Apparently, they were sponsored boots, so there's no better way to get sponsored boots noticed than wearing.
You've just given them.
I haven't said who. I haven't said who the sponsor was, unless they want to come and sponsor us.
The Super League players who beg for boots on Twitter and the refs are going, what is going on?
It must be the new range of boots that.
I'm sure.
Is it Oxon are doing or?
Oh, I couldn't possibly say.
No. I'm going to have pictures of Chris Kendall looking like he's going to steal our mobile phones.
They'll have to compete with Tunnocks as to who's sponsoring the
podcast. And I'm sure someone from the darts will confirm this to us. James Wade got in trouble for wearing, I think it was grey or brown trousers on stage. Made even funnier by the fact that Peter Wright just wears any old crap he can find these days. So we'll get fined for that. We're going to get banned. Some people would like to see Chris Kendall banned. Can he get banned for wearing?
No, they were sponsored. Because they were sponsored boots. They were provided. They were provided. You see, so they were legitimised. But yeah,
sorry,
only you would have.
I was horrified when I turned the TV on.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who.
So, as the Wakefield fan in the room, what was your impression of your?
Wasn't very good, was it? Wasn't very good. As Kevin points out, Josh Griffin kicking on the second tackle when 2 tries behind with 10 minutes to go. Why? I don't know.
Yeah.
And yet he'd had a good game, but that again is discipline, isn't it? That you're getting in a position where it's panic.
It's just panic, yeah.
There's that strange moment where did Castleford spill a kick? Tom Lynham puts the ball down, but because he put the ball down, it's a 20-metre dropout. If he'd have let it go dead, Wakefield would have got a dropout themselves. So
But fine margins didn't determine
But
that game.
no,
it was
because
Wakefield's
Wakefield were
inability
heavily beaten.
to put concerted pressure on the Castleford line.
Amazing how many times we kick ourselves in the foot when we're in big games, as mentioned, and on TV after a run of
I
form.
just think the kicking game was poor.
What was the atmosphere like, by the way? Because I appreciate one side of the
it's
ground was
hard-
empty, so
It's hard to say because the media are behind the post.
I know, I'm
which-
not
and we've got a very low level
Yeah.
to watch the game. And at the side of us were the 500 Castleford fans, which meant that they sounded louder than the
Yeah.
Wakefield fans, because that's who you were literally almost stood amongst.
I mean, those
It's
people in
hard
front of
to
you
say,
weren't making
but there
much
was a
noise.
debate saying
Oh.
that clearly the demand there was for more than 4,000 people. Should that game have been taken to Barnsley or?
you're never going to consider
Just
an
Michael
advantage, are you?
Parkinson tribute, take it to Barnsley.
Well, no, I'm just saying, would Wakefield would want the home advantage, but at the same time, would they have benefited from double the amount of crowd being able to go at a different venue? I don't know.
That's Mr. Carter.
Who was
Not Gary.
who was scanning people's tickets?
I did enjoy the bit where they showed him near the end of the game and he disappeared off and all he could see is Darren, who works in the shop and does everything else at the club, just in the back, just looking like he was in charge, which he probably is, in fairness.
I mean, I don't know what's happening with the takeover of Wakefield, but I suspect whoever is taking over might want to know before he agrees the fee he's going to pay if they're going to be in Super League or the Championship.
What's all these clubs tweeting about? We need to get more fans in for our IMG points. Featherstone were tweeting about that earlier. What are you doing? James on this game says, which of Cass or Wakefield do you think the Championship clubs will want to have in the Championship? Which of them will take more fans to away games? Well, they should be getting their own fans in for a start, and the answer to that is probably Castleford.
It doesn't matter because the likelihood is if we go with form in the Championship table, Featherstone will be replacing them, and whether it's Castleford or Wakefield, it is almost a like-for-like replacement. I still think there's something to be played out in that division in the playoff for who gets promoted.
Yeah, I don't think it's a given.
And
I think Featherstone realised it's not a given,
Yeah.
which is why they've changed their. They need some stability there for how they approach the running.
as Bill Arthur said, slightly changing the narrative towards the end of the game. It's not over yet. But that section of the programme is now. Cut that out as a video, and that's a great point for me to end it at. Let's move on. See, you don't know how this stuff falls apart.